There's that saying that goes around to not judge a book by its cover, but the fact of the matter is, we all do. We are wired to make snap judgments, and that's okay. Back in the day, it was a survival thing. We needed to know within seconds if someone or something was a threat or not. These snap judgments, they serve as shortcuts because our brain is constantly trying to save energy by jumping to conclusions based on the little information that we have and whatever's easiest to grab, like your appearance, your tone, your posture, etc. We may not be using it for survival means now, but there's definitely still a ton of value in helping us navigate social situations. We're constantly forming impressions of each other, just like other people are forming impressions of you. But what most people don't realize is just how much weight those first impressions carry, how one single positive trait can create a ripple effect that shapes the way people see your entire personality, competence, or value. Welcome back to the It Girl Playbook. Today we will be exploring this psychological bias called the halo effect and learn how we can use it to our advantage. The halo effect is a psychological term that explains why our brain tends to assume that if someone is good at one thing or has one positive trait, then they must be good at other things too, even if they are completely unrelated and even if we have no proof of that. So, for example, if someone is physically attractive, people often assume they must also be confident or successful, even though those things aren't necessarily related. A student, if they excel in one subject, a teacher may assume that this kid must be good at all other subjects as well, even if in reality that kid is struggling in other subjects. Or a manager who's always calm and well dressed is often seen as more competent and organized, even if they aren't actually the best at their job. This is the halo effect, which essentially is our cognitive bias where one positive trait or attribute encourages us to assume more positive traits and create this quote-unquote halo for the person. The opposite is true also, or more commonly known as the horn effect, where a negative trait or attribute causes us to associate more negative traits with them. So for example, if we see someone who wears a dirty, wrinkly old shirt, we assume that this person is lazy, unambitious, or not doing well in life, when that could literally be someone who's so successful that they don't need to impress anyone. Or we see someone who doesn't say much, keeps to herself, and doesn't post a lot online. People may assume that she's cold, she's boring, or just not confident, but really she's just private. This could even work on products and brands. If you tried one product from a brand and it wasn't good, you would probably assume that other products from this brand aren't that good either. We can argue day and night whether or not this is the right thing to do, but the fact of the matter is that these subconscious biases exist, which leads us to the next section, why it matters. The halo effect, it influences so many different decisions across so many different horizons, whether it's hiring decisions, dating choices, first impressions, and other very real life outcomes. It affects how you're treated, how much grace you're given, and how seriously people take you. It's why pretty privilege exists. There's benefits in putting effort into how you choose to show up in the world. It fuels your overall personal branding because when you show up as confident and polished and put together in one area, people assume that you have your life together in other areas as well. Because at the end of the day, how people perceive you often shapes the opportunities you're given before people even get to know your full potential. So by understanding that, you can master it. Otherwise, you might find yourself being stuck in a position where you have to put twice as much work into getting the same results. There's actual studies that show when you don't have those positive qualities, you might have to put in extra effort to compensate. For example, there was this attractive bias study done in 1972 where participants were shown photos of people categorized as attractive, average, or unattractive. attractive individuals were consistently rated as more intelligent, kind, competent, and socially skilled, despite having no other information about them. Which means that if someone is not conventionally attractive, they don't automatically get that quote-unquote halo, so they often have to prove those traits in other ways, whether it's by working harder, speaking more confidently, or dressing better. We've also hear people say things like, I wasn't attractive growing up, and so I had to develop a personality, or I had to learn to be funny. This holds true beyond just physical looks also. There was another study done in 2012 on confidence and leadership perception, which proved this to be true as well. People who appeared more confident, even if they weren't actually more competent, were more likely to seen as leaders, which means those who don't naturally exude confidence often need to go the extra mile in proving their expertise, their leadership, or their value. And so through all of these examples, you can kind of see the halo effect in effect, how it can work in one's favor and how it can also create imbalance for those without the halo. Obviously, we don't want to be in a position where we fall into the trap of having to put in that extra effort to compensate, which leads us to our next section, how to use it to your advantage. By understanding that others do this, you can be mindful and intentional about how you present yourself. You only get one good chance at making first impressions, and that impression has the opportunity to open doors for you if you are intentional about it. Dress in a way that reflects your best self. It doesn't have to be all posh and all perfect, it just has to be intentional. Also, sometimes I see and hear people say that they just aren't pretty or attractive, but genuinely, being hot is a mentality, and the thing about beauty is that it's subjective also. Go where you are celebrated and pay attention to the details, your posture, hygiene, grooming, and even your scent. There's psychology in scent and how that can add to your overall impression as well. And understand that you do this as well. It can really distort how we evaluate people and things as we tend to generalize. It's a shortcut, yes, that can be convenient at times, but by being mindful of this, it can also prevent you from making choices and decisions that may not be very wise, especially when it comes to your safety. This is an awful example, but let's take a look at Ted Bundy, right? He was conventionally attractive and people said that he was charming, and so naturally, with the halo effect, people want to assume he is a good person when clearly that was not the case. And the last tip that I have is to master the art of charisma. This is something that I'm personally working on as well, because I think by having charm, it gives you a lot of grace. When someone is charismatic and charming, immediately that gets associated with confidence and other positive attributes as well. And the thing about charm is that you don't need to be witty or loud to be charming. You just need to make people feel seen and feel important. And this is something that I've noticed Laura Sanchez has been able to do so incredibly well. If you've seen videos of her from her aerial film production company, you can clearly see how she interacts with the very wealthy people that she is always around, and you can clearly see how she has a way of making people feel important. That is charisma. We have a small playlist that I'm slowly adding to as I'm doing my own homework, so feel free to use that as a resource. Leaving a good impression, it doesn't just stop at looks. It also includes how you make people feel and whether or not they will even remember you. The halo effect can seem like it's about faking it till you make it, where you have to appear very confident, very charming when that isn't naturally you, or you have to be conventionally attractive to get ahead, but really it's realizing that people are always forming impressions, and now understanding that you get to influence what those impressions are. And there's so much value in that. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to be intentional, because by being intentional, you get to influence how the halo effect gets to affect you, and hopefully it's to your advantage. That's it for today. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check out the It Girl newsletter. I'm actually working on some exciting new projects for you and would love to keep you in the loop. Other than that, I hope to see you in the next one, and in the meantime, as always, stay hot. Bye!